Hi, good day, and I want to talk about. Sorry, this is the Dynamic Digi series on the Brexit recession. Um, well, my honest view, as I've stated in previous videos, is that I think we are headed for a recession. I think we just need to accept that reality. I'm not, as to reiterate, I'm not an economist, professional economist, but then to me it just seems like common sense that we will have a mild recession. People, you know, as I say, I'm not a professional economist, but one has to look at how things are presented in the economic media and the general mainstream media. Yes, it is true that we do not know for certain because, but then let's apply a little common sense and economic logic. And yes, you can talk about neuroeconomics and, that, but then some economic behavior is just plain instinctual common sense. For instance, firms are obviously a bit jittery after the vote, so they would not plan as much. So if firms don't plan as much, they don't plan investments, they don't plan to buy in goods and services, then that means the demand for goods and services would fall. So the demand from businesses, then that means that would feed into employees or to consumers, because businesses wouldn't hire as much, which in turn would mean that there are less people in work. So again, it would snowball. So plus also, if firms continue, or their jitteriness, so to speak, grows, then they may even lay off employees. And if employees get laid off, then of course they have to be conservative, with a small c, as they say, in how they utilize their spending. This would mean that they would not spend on big purchases like buying a house unless it were critically necessary. Well, house is probably a bad example because it is a necessity. Let's say something like a fridge or a microwave oven or TV set, or a holiday overseas somewhere. I suppose they may not buy a new car. If they have to buy a car, maybe a used car. People won't take out loans, so banks would have more liquidity. So all those factors, which would say are common sense for any economic actor. You have to, when economists say, I suppose more contemporary times, that people don't act rationally, well, we do, but not in the same sense as like economists like in the 19th century thought we did, or the early 20th century. So like, yes, we do not know, but then come on, just based on, look, Mark Carney, the Bank of England governor, he said there's going to be a recession. This was before Brexit. Post-Brexit, yes, he's moderated his views somewhat, but then, even he or any economist would say the same. IMF did, again, based on just common sense economic behavior. The thing is, we do not know, and we are basing it off of, again, theory of how economic actors do behave. But then it's wrong, conversely, to say that there won't be a recession and use statistics from the second quarter, which was only covered literally 1 week after the referendum, or say like jobs were up in May, but that was May. May cannot equate logically and rationally to any frankly normal-minded person to June or July. Different months, obviously. That's just self-evident. So I think I think we need to brace ourselves and accept the reality that it could happen, and the likelihood of it happening is increasing. And we cannot use statistics from, say, earlier this year before the referendum to justify why they wouldn't be. That's nonsense. Economics is not an exact science. And because of that inherent inexactness and that inherent ambiguity, then you have to be careful as to the metric one uses. You cannot say, oh, what happened before. That's nonsense. It's like saying, you cannot say, well, the second quarter was healthy growth, there's no recession. Well, that's the second quarter. Times, again, economics is an inexact science. It's very dynamic, it's in flux because human behavior period is in flux. So you cannot use a snapshot from the second quarter or first quarter this year before the referendum and say. I think if we look at the third quarter figures, I'm not sure if it would be negative growth, but it would probably be very close to it, to be honest. Possibly maybe 0.1. As I say, I'm not a professional economist, but I just think basically that the media are not portraying this well, and I think we just need to brace ourselves for a slight recession towards the end of this year, possibly to the beginning of next year. I know that sounds quite negative, but I think again, to me, it's just a reality. Because certainly Brexit has given a shock. No one can dispute that, and it's just the extent of that shock. I'm an optimist, so I don't think it'll be. Well, it's a mix of optimism and realism. I don't think it would be a big recession, not like 2008, because again, there's different circumstances. But yeah, I think by 2017, let's say a year's time from now, I think things would have cleared up, because I think firms would have I think possibly Mrs. May start the Article 50, and we'll see from there how things go. So yeah, and also she's developing a new industrial economic strategy, which obviously will be a plus, because any successful economy needs to have a guiding strategy. We'll see how things go from there. But as for now, again, we need to accept the reality that I think there's a strong likelihood of a recession, and we have to ignore, at least in my opinion, much of what the economic media say, and the mainstream media say, and to some extent some of these economics agencies and research agencies who say, the data from quarter 2 was good, which frankly is nonsense, because it's inherently retrospective. So it doesn't make sense to use it as for something as complex and as dynamic as an economy of any country. You cannot isolate a set of data from one period and extrapolate it as a trend for a next. Yes, trends exist, but then again, it doesn't make sense, especially with something as big as leaving the European Union, which we all have to agree with is, this is probably one of the biggest this is probably one of the biggest events politically in most people's lifetime, probably since the end of World War II. It must rank up there, say, like with the rise of Thatcher, or even getting into the EU, I guess. The devaluation under Wilson, the winter discontent, the Falklands War. It certainly is up there with one of the defining, the Suez Crisis, the installation of the NHS. It has to rank up there, one of the great political events, probably in the history of the United Kingdom. let alone just after the last few decades, or after, yeah. So we'll see how things go. But again, to reiterate again, I think we should just accept the reality that we're in for a recession, or the very, very least, the likelihood of such is high, and we should be optimistic that it would not be a severe recession. I don't think it will, because I just think it will be a shock, but I don't think it would last very long or be very deep. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for listening.